Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Dev Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Om Shri Ganeshaya Namah. So welcome everybody to today's session of the Cafe Spirituality Wisdom Talk. We're very fortunate today that we have Mukesh Gupta speaking to us on self-inquiry, on discovering through mindfulness, anyway, it doesn't matter through what, because I don't know the subject, he knows, and he will speak about it. I will share with you quickly what Cafe Spirituality as a group is all about. It is about facilitating an inner journey, and the loyalty is to the end. The loyalty is towards discovering the inner joy, the inner self, the ultimate reality, and there is no loyalty to a path. And therefore, that is our effort, that we bring people who are on various paths to come and share their experiences, their understanding, so that the participants can find within them what they resonate with and go further on their journey through that. Because अल्टीमेट अंडरस्टैंडिंग एक ही है कि सब एक हैं, that we are all one. अब उस अंडरस्टैंडिंग पे पहुंचने के लिए हम लोग पाथ्स कौन से लेते हैं, वो हम सबकी अपनी प्रेफरेंस, अपना प्रारब्ध, अपना मेंटल मेकअप, अपना इमोशनल मेकअप, बहुत कुछ है. So today we have Mukesh Gupta, who has been associated with the Krishnamurti Foundation in Banaras, and he was based there for many years. And he has been conducting retreats on self-inquiry. And I met him many years back in Banaras. And for me, visiting J. Krishnamurti location, a place where he has been, where he has rested, where he has meditated, where he has spoken to people, it was a very big deal for me at that point. मेरे लिए वो एक तीर्थ की तरह ही था, because I have benefited from some of his teachings immensely, and कुछ फॉग मेरे अंदर का क्लियर हुआ था उनकी बातें पढ़ के. तो मेरे लिए जब मैं बनारस गई थी, तो जो काशी विश्वनाथ मंदिर जाने की फीलिंग थी, वो जय कृष्णमूर्ति सेंटर जाने में भी वही फीलिंग हुई थी मुझे. एंड वहां पे मुझे मुकेश गुप्ता मिले थे और बहुत अच्छा लगा था. एंड वी स्टेड इन टच. एंड he may or may not be surprised, but when I had a session there was a lady there who was so excited to know that I know Mukesh Gupta. So Mukesh, I never got a chance to even tell you about it. And मुझे अभी बात करते करते याद आया कि हाना कितनी excited हो गई थी. Oh, you know Mukesh Gupta, how wonderful, such a sweet man. I said, okay, this is nice, because if you have touched somebody's life and they feel so happy to meet somebody who you know, that's a sign of how much of a difference you have made in their lives. And that is what is the most important thing for me, for anybody. Not the number of followers they have, not the number of workshops they have done, not the years of study and scriptures and scholarly work they have done, but their ability to touch lives in a way that that joy overflows through them when they meet somebody else who has met the same person. So that is the experience I have about Mukesh. And I will just hand over to him. And if there is, he has his website, and of course this is an open session. Whatever questions there are, they can be addressed to Mukesh. I'm sure he'll give us time for it. And whether he wants us to ask questions while we go along or keep them for the end, Mukesh will share that with you. Over to you, Mukesh. Thank you so much. And thank you immensely also for those few sessions that I was able to attend, which in the evenings on Monday. I'm sorry I could not continue with those, but it was really nice indeed. And if there is any such thing that you're continuing to do, please share with everybody here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. whatever we are seeing happening in the society, in the world, is only a reflection of what we are from inside. So we should not be surprised how the society is, how the world is. Whatever is happening outside is only a reflection of what we are from inside. And the collective consciousness, what makes the whole world. If there is peace, if there is order in our society, in our families, in the world, that reflects that peace, that order, that compassion is inside us. But if there is violence, if there is aggression, there is inequality, then that shows that those qualities are within us. So that's why, in order to transform the world, in order to bring about any deeper change in the society, that change has to begin with each one of us. That's why it is so important to know what we are. Without knowing what we are, whatever we do brings more misery, brings more confusion and suffering. And I feel that's why it is so important to bring this element of self-knowing in our day-to-day education. We are educated partially. Only our intellect is being educated. Only a certain aspect of our personality is being educated. But the another half or very significant part of our personality, I feel, is being neglected. And that is the cause of all this suffering on this earth. And that's why perhaps all these teachers from ancient times till now, they have been emphasizing this question of knowing yourself, which was called know thyself in the ancient Greek times. From ancient Upanishads to Socrates to Plato and to J. Krishnamurti, all these teachers have laid so much emphasis on this question. You know yourself. Without knowing yourself, there is no basis of right living. There is no basis for peace, for love, for compassion. And Socrates even said, it's quite an alarming statement. An unexamined life is not worth living. And this is, I feel, is also true that the cause of our suffering and all our fear is because that we do not ask this fundamental question, who we are, who actually I am. And without asking this question, we remain, as I said, with confusion, with disorder. Whatever we do has no solid ground, a ground of clarity, a ground of clear perception. So that's why this question is very important. Unless we see the significance of asking this question, we will not ask it. We will be asking how does the atom behave, how to create wonderful computers, how to develop technologically, how to create great buildings, marvelous structures. And we have done all that. But without self-knowledge, without this asking fundamental question, whatever we do will bring destruction. As we all know, this quantum theory, all this discovery which happened during that time, Einstein, Heisenberg, all those discoveries, they were wonderful, but they were used for destruction. The atomic nuclear war also started, and we are all living till now under the shadow, under the fear of this nuclear war. Why? Because we have addressed only one aspect of our being, that intellectual aspect, that aspect of cultivating the mind. But we have not asked the another question of cultivating the heart, understanding oneself. That's why all our discoveries, in spite of like their benefit in our day-to-day life, they are providing, of course, certain comfort, convenience, but at the same time, they are bringing lot of threat, lot of danger on this planet. So the question is, what does it mean to know yourself? Friends, I'm going to share in a very, I will try that, what I share in a very common language so that it doesn't look like, philosophical or something mystical. And please ask questions whenever you feel, even in between while I'm sharing, I can address those questions. So what does it mean to know yourself? Does it mean to gather more and more information about yourself? Does it mean gathering more and more ideas, knowledge about yourself? We have a lot of knowledge through psychology, but has that knowledge brought about any deeper transformation? Perhaps not. So this is another deep question. Knowledge alone cannot bring about any deep change unless it is coupled with knowing oneself, realizing what we are truly. So knowledge is important, but it is incomplete without the guidance of this true awareness, without the guidance of this true self-knowledge. And as I said, self-knowledge is not just gathering more and more information about yourself. So what does it mean? Let us have a look. And how do I know myself? To speak broadly, there are two ways, if I can describe, to know oneself. One way is knowing yourself through thought and conditioning, through your intellect, through your mind, and which we have done a lot. And the other is knowing yourself through direct perception, through direct observation, and through a silent mind. So I would like to explore both these aspects. And it is important to understand the implications of knowing yourself only through thought and conditioning, and knowing yourself through direct insight, through direct perception. What is the difference? Let's have a look. So, knowing yourself through thinking and conditioning, there are certain aspects of it. The thinking is always born from the past, from the conditioning. And this conditioning, this thinking has its also role, basic role in our survival. But this thinking is always born from a reaction from the memory and the past. For example, to remember your name, what you are doing, knowledge, information about yourself, where you live, the language I am speaking now, all this is part of conditioning, and it is useful. So there is a use of conditioning, there is a use of thought in the physical world for our day-to-day survival. And this whole field of thinking is also field of conditioning. Our whole brain is a result of conditioning of thousands of years. What I shared in the beginning, our whole evolution, I would say from Big Bang till now, this whole journey is contained in each one of us in a nutshell. And we may not be aware of that. And we are dictated by all those, stories, all those conditioning. But the question is it inevitable? Are we condemned to live only through the conditioning? This is what we are asking now. And another aspect of this thinking is that it is an information processing. And out of that information processing, taking a judgment. Like even cooking a food is like an information processing. You know the right amount of the vegetable, how you cook, and also in order to do your job, your work, you need that. And the last, and I feel the most essential part of this thinking process is survival. All our activities, if we watch, are aimed at survival. And physically it is required. All animals, they live with this survival instinct, and we are also animals. We have inherited, we have evolved through this animal instinct. And there is lot of that survival instinct. And thought provides the tool to survive. And with that survival instinct, there is also great fear. The fear of dying, the fear of dangers. Physically, it is required. You know, that thought is very helpful. But the question is, can thought be useful in the psychological field? This is the whole problem. When we try to use thought in the psychological field, it becomes lost. Because thought is able to work efficiently in the physical world, but as soon as it enters into the psyche in defining ourselves, then it starts creating confusion and problems. For example, this is fact that we are born in, say, in India or in America or wherever. It's a geographical fact. But and thought is helpful, okay, to carry out jobs and to where you are living and all that. But the moment thought starts defining ourselves psychologically, that I am Indian or I am American and I am great, we are the greatest race on this earth, then thought enters into a very dangerous field. It starts creating division. It starts creating illusion that I am this, you are that, I am separate from the rest of the earth, and that becomes the ground for suffering and division. So the same tool, thought, which was useful physically, very useful, and we cannot deny that, it becomes really dangerous when it enters into the psychological field. And this is what I feel we need to understand and learn. Now, the another aspect, knowing yourself through direct perception or through a clear silent mind. Because if we are knowing ourselves only through thought, then we remain at a very superficial level. And this superficial level is full of illusions and is full of ignorance. Then I will know just what thought or my conditioning is saying to me. I am this, I am that, I am poor, I am not beautiful, or I am beautiful. I am, ugly. I belong to this race, I belong to that religion. All these categories, they are layers upon layers of conditioning. So I am living under the heavy burden of conditioning when I know myself only through conditioned mind or conditioned thought. So there are enormous implications of it. Then I am living a blind life. There is no sense of awareness. There can't be any love or compassion when I am knowing myself only through conditioning. Then I am living within the prison of my own conditioning, the prison of my stories, my identifications. So what does it mean to know yourself through direct perception? And I feel this is the door to freedom. Otherwise, we are condemned to live in a prison of our own making. Nobody else has made the prison. We have made it. So what does this clear perception mean? What are the aspects of this clear perception? So I would say that the first aspect of this clear perception is this looking, or you can call it pure seeing, pure observation. And this observation happens when the mind is silent. Because when I am observing, when I am seeing the world or myself through thinking, then I'm not looking, I'm not seeing. So there is a difference between thinking and looking. The difficulty is, or the root cause of problem is that I'm all the time thinking about myself or the world or society. And of course, thinking has its place, but thinking alone is very limited. Unless there is a quality of looking, unless there is a quality of perception, there won't be any clarity. So when I look at myself clearly, without the interference of conditioning, without the interference of my background, then I am able to see things clearly as they are. So this is Very important aspect of this clear perception. Looking not just physically, it's not recognition, but looking from your whole being, from your heart, from your mind, from all your senses. Similarly, listening. What is listening? Is it only physical listening? Is it just listening through your ears? That is only hearing. We all know what is hearing, but listening is much more deeper than hearing. This listening happens from your whole being when there is no any inner confusion, when there is no inner division. And this listening happens when I am not judging, when I am not interpreting, when the mind is silent. In this listening, there is no division. I am listening to you, to oneself, or to anybody with total openness. My heart and mind is fully open. And out of that openness, I can respond. But if I am closed, I will be only reacting through thought. And reacting through thought is not listening. And this looking and listening can only happen when there is this element of love. As we all know, when there is this quality of love, you simply, very naturally listen. This looking and listening becomes very natural. That passion is there. But if there is no love and affection, you don't listen to anybody. Your listening is very superficial. You just listen at the intellectual level, and it doesn't mean much. You may learn a language or something at that level, but perceiving deeply something, you require this element of love. And I feel this act of looking and listening, they are an act of love and affection. And without this love, you cannot listen or look. And this looking, listening, and love is the deep learning. This is learning about oneself. This is learning or knowing about yourself. And this happens when you are looking, when you are listening with this sense of deep affection, deep compassion. You would see that mind is silent. It is not agitated. It is not noisy. And this is the whole aspect of self-knowing. So friends, clear perception, which is self-knowing, helps us to discern what is real and what is illusion, what is essential and what is inessential. Lack of clear perception and therefore mistaking illusion as real is the root cause of suffering and fear. When I'm not able to see something clearly, then what happens? I live with illusions. I live with things which are non-essential. Then I am mistaking things which are false as real. Then I'm not able to see myself, who am I actually? Then I see myself through this, glasses of conditioning. So this clear perception is, I feel, very significant in self-knowledge. And this is the inner guide. This is the inner teacher, I feel. And the freedom is to see or perceive reality as it is, without any distortion. And it is only a silent mind which can see what is real. So that's why freedom and a silent mind, they are synonymous. They are the one thing. You can see what is only when the mind is silent, when the mind is really free. So the seeing or perceiving itself is freedom. We usually have different notions about freedom. We think that freedom is whatever I want to do, I'm allowed to do, is that freedom. That's very limited definition. That is not freedom. Then you are only dictated by your own inner conditioning, your ignorance, and your desires. But the real true freedom is when you are able to think for yourself, when you are able to perceive out of freedom, out of real independence. And when you are able to see things clearly, then you are really free. When you are able to see yourself, not through the images, not through the labels I have, whether label of a religion or label of a caste, a label of nationality, all these labels, they are the result of my conditioning. So when I am seeing myself through the images and labels or through identification, I am not free. There is a bondage. And part of this, a very significant aspect of this self-knowledge is asking an authentic question and staying with it. So this staying with the question is very important. We are not used to of staying with the question. We usually are trained to reply to any question out of our preconceived knowledge, information. This becomes a very habitual pattern. As soon as we listen to a question, our past background starts reacting, responding. And that's a very superficial response. The real wisdom is in staying with the question, asking an authentic, deep question. I remember perhaps Einstein has said somewhere that who is a genius? Genius is not a person who is able to reply to a number of questions very quickly. But a real genius is who is able to stay with the question for a sustained period of time. This is the only difference. People like who are impatient, who are in a rush to find an answer, they are not able to stay with the question. They will, of course, they will find an immediate ready-made answer from a book or from some authority, but that would not be your real answer. The true answer comes when you stay with the question, when you allow that question to explore, to answer itself. And that requires this clear perception, that requires deep patience. So this question, who am I? What is this I yourself? Can one stay with it? Ask this question, who am I? Am I only a bundle of images? Am I a bundle of labels? Am I only a collection of all these conditioning? When you ask a question, that is very important. And what is this I? What is this self made of? Is there a self without thinking and identification process? And this is a very deep question because we know the self only through thinking, through conditioning, as I said. And we think that that is all to what we are when we know only through thinking process. And this whole idea of self, the me or ego, is born out of this thinking process. This is something very important. And I feel this is one of the deepest insights of J. Krishnamurti when he says that this me or ego is born out of thought. And this is really very interesting. We think that I am thinking, that I is creating thoughts. But what about if the fact is just the opposite? Thought is creating the I, thought is creating the self. This is the whole reversal. I feel it's almost like a transformation when you realize it, that this ego or the me is born out of thought. And then it creates an illusion that I is independent. I think, when I think that I'm able to create thoughts, I'm able to think just freely, this may be an illusion. And thinker and the thought, they are not separate. Because thinker is born out of thought. that they are just one process. So the question is, am I only this thinking process? And who am I without these images, without these stories and cravings created by thought? Because as long as I am taking myself, only images, only stories, only cravings created by this conditioned field, this conditioned thought, then there is no space, there is no freedom, there is no love. So who am I in the absence of all these stories? Just ask this question and live with this question. And I feel there are three very important questions. Can the mind see the futility and danger of living with any illusion and identification with past stories? And I feel these are very practical insights. I'm just sharing these three questions, and we can experiment, we can testify these questions in our day-to-day living, in our day-to-day relationships. Can we see the futility? Just Can the mind see the futility and danger? This is very important, to see not only the absurdity, meaninglessness of living with an illusion and identification, but also the danger of it. It's not only meaningless, but it's very dangerous for our collective survival on this planet. All the disorder, chaos we see, whether environmentally, economically, politically, all the corruption, all the violence, it is the result of this, the result of lack of clear perception, lack of asking deeper questions. Second question, can the mind see the futility and the danger of automatically reacting from the past and creating a psychological center or ego? You can see that in our day-to-day life, how we automatically react from our past memories. Can we become aware when we are reacting from the past memories? And that is the practical thing to do. The moment we are reacting, can there be an awareness? Can there be an observation at that moment? We usually become aware after the reactions have passed, have happened. Then we can't do anything. But can there be an awareness at the moment of reaction? Then you will see that that reaction will not be so powerful, not dominating you. And then this mechanical habit of creating a psychological center becomes, less and less. See, the mind or thought needs to create a center physically, and that is needed for our day-to-day survival, to carry out jobs. A physical center, and thought helps in that, brain helps in that. But when thought creates a psychological center, as I said earlier, and this psychological center or ego is created only through reaction from the past memories. That's why it is important to become aware during the time of reaction from the past memories. And that is the birth of the psychological me or self. Self is not a fixed entity. It is born each time through the reaction. Once you become aware of these reaction, it will hesitate to create psychological center. The thought will work, create center only when it is required to do things physically. But it will hesitate from creating a psychological ego. And the third significant question is, can the mind see that there is only suffering, for all in a self-centered way of living? When we are living a life of self-centeredness, being occupied only about oneself, all the time thinking about oneself, one's benefit, one's desires, one's fulfillment, what happens? The brain or mind becomes insensitive. And when you are insensitive, you are unable to see things clearly. Then there is no clear perception. That's why this self-centeredness is directly connected with our insensitivity. And this is the cause of suffering. So when we see that there is suffering in this self-centered way of living, then only we will hesitate in living a life of self-centeredness. And this doesn't mean that we are not taking care of ourselves. Actually, when there is no self-centeredness, we are able to take care of each other, for oneself, for the whole planet, more beautifully, more peacefully, with deep love and compassion. We think that through self-centeredness, we are able to take care of ourselves, our families. This may be an illusion. We are putting ourselves, our families, our whole world at a greater danger when we don't see the danger of it. Self-centeredness may give immediate relief, immediate comfort, but in the long run, it is not in the benefit for the whole humanity, for oneself. And the last question of this presentation is, and I feel this is something very important, do I see the sacredness, beauty, and love of all existence? Can I ask this question at any moment during the day? Do I feel this sacredness? Do I feel the beauty, the love in my heart for the whole existence, for the whole life? If I really feel that sacredness, that beauty, then I will stop contributing in the suffering of human consciousness. I will stop contributing in the chaos, in the mess of the human consciousness. Then there will be no violence, there will be no aggressiveness. If I really see the sacredness and the beauty. So the question is, why don't I see? If I don't feel this sacredness, this beauty, this love in my heart, why don't I see it? And stay with this question. Yeah, thank you. So friends, I invite for questions and for any observation or comment, please feel free.
So, Mukesh, I must admit that when I had read some of these statements from Krishnamurti's book many years back, and they kind of went over my head at that point of time. And it's only when in deep pain at some point of time, when I looked very deep within and I stayed with it for a while, some unfoldment started happening then. And one of the things which I think reinforced my, I wouldn't say reinforced, but kind of got me rolling, was one of the statements where he said, stop digging your own wells and go through the, drink from the river of life. And I just kind of, for I think a couple of days, I consciously decided then to not worry too much about myself. And if whenever the worry started coming, I said, no, I'm going to leave this aside and I'm going to trust life and see, if I am thirsty, is it possible to be quenched from the river of life? And I kid you not, that the synchronicity of life started unfolding right in front of my very eyes. And which is why sharing became a very important component of my life, because I realized that while it does happen that way for everybody, वो हम अपने हाथ से लगाम छोड़ते नहीं हैं. And therefore, if somebody shares from their own life something like this, when staying with the question deeply and allowing, instead of looking for answers in the thought domain, but allowing for perception to take place, um, it is very empowering indeed. Now, don't ask me for who it is empowering, because I still do not have the answer to who am I. But um, and but the one thing that I still do find sometimes difficult to swallow is that it does not always seem beautiful and sacred when there is malnutrition and hunger and violence. It does not, the sacredness starts getting veiled, and it becomes very difficult to be in acceptance at that point of saying, okay, all of life is sacred. If all of life is sacred, then why is a murderer a murderer, right? And I'm just playing the devil's advocate here, because um, I'm sharing from my thought process when I had started reading initially, J. Krishnamurti, and the kind of questions that used to come to me. But I'm just sharing for the sake of everybody else here who may be interested in pursuing this particular path of self-discovery, that when you stay with it with an openness for even a limited period of time, the unfoldment is definite and real. The major risk that one runs, not just here, but that is true in any path, is that instead of sometimes the insights deepening, the ego becomes more concrete, and that becomes उसको पिघालना और बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता है. So I can see Ankur is smiling away. Are you relating to what I'm saying, Ankur? Is that why your smile? Why I notice that smile on your face? Uh, so my question is, what are the um, measures that one can take that one does not mistake a preconceived notion to be an insight? One does not mistake something that is being prompted by the ego to be a deeper understanding, because these are issues, these are real issues I continue to face.
And Anu, can I add something to that question?
Please do. Yes, Ankur, please add. Am I not audible?
No, you are audible. Yeah. Ankur, do you want to ask the question? Please go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Am I audible now?
Yeah. Yes. You are. You please go ahead. You are audible.
I think when I unmute, I'm not able to hear others somehow.
So we have heard you. We can hear you. So now you speak. Don't worry about listening to us right now. And when others speak, then you mute yourself again.
Okay. So my question was very much connected to what you just said. In fact, I just read something about what Osho said. Yes, something I read yesterday or day before, that this path of inquiry is very tricky and very few will realize themselves through the inquiry. And he said that others will just get caught in the concept and not really experience who am I. I was like, I've been on this path, and I've been listening to Muji a lot, and Robert and Nisargadatta Maharaj, and so I was that time wondering what Anu just said. Am I also, caught up in the concept, or am I going toward the actual discovery of who am I? So yeah, so something similar question I had.
Thank you. So, first of all, I would like to respond the first part of the question, that when we see lot of suffering, lot of violence, poverty, so how can I feel the sacredness of the whole existence? So I feel that we must understand the suffering, the poverty, or whatever disorder we are seeing in the world. The root cause of is that because we are not in this process of self-knowing, we are not asking these fundamental questions, because we are not feeling this sacredness of the life. So it is directly connected with it, and it is the result of that not feeling that love and beauty in the heart. Now the question is, when you realize, when you feel connected with the suffering of the others without the interpretation of the thought, without the influence of the thought, then there is a pure empathy, I would say. Then there is a pure compassion. So in that sense, suffering can also be turned into a compassion, into a sacred journey, because the suffering of the other is not separate from the suffering from oneself. Suffering is one. It is not. There is no separation in the suffering. The separation comes out of illusion. So can I realize that the cause of suffering is this illusion? The cause of suffering is this lack of clear perception. And because there is no clear perception, I live a life of mechanicalness, of habitual patterns, of conditioning. That's why to see the danger of living such kind of life. And this will always lead to this suffering. And all this suffering on this earth is due to this lack of clear seeing, lack of asking this question. Why don't I feel this sacredness? What stops me from feeling this sacredness, this beauty, this love in this moment? So just asking this question, what is stopping me? I'm not saying that you have to feel it all the time, but ask why this feeling is not there, and what is stopping it, what is clouding it. And then I will discover in my day-to-day life what is clouding it. My insensitivity is clouding it. All the time thinking about myself, about my security, about my, just about my family. It is all about, the whole life is centered about the self, me. Then insensitivity is natural. And this insensitivity will cloud my senses, my perception. And this leads to suffering. And when suffering becomes huge, then I suddenly start waking up, start questioning, asking questions why I'm suffering. So the intelligent way is to ask this question when the suffering is in a very seed form. The moment I am creating an image about the other, I have sown the seed of suffering. The moment I have created an image about myself, that is the sowing of the seed of suffering. So this is the actually work of self-knowing. And how do I know if I am living with concepts or with insight? I feel one criteria is the conflict. You will feel the conflict in your heart, in your mind. If it is only a concept, you will be torn apart between the reality and the concept, between the truth and what should be. So conflict is a clear indicator of that thing, that you are living with concepts but not with the truth. Then this division would not be there if you have seen the reality as it is, that what is and the what should be. Mind is all the time creating what should be and what should not be. And this is the whole movement of the ego. Ego lives on this idea, what should be and what should not be. If you watch yourself, all the time we are caught up in this whirlpool of what should be and what should not be. And this is this shows that we are living only with concepts. So now ask this question to yourself: why I am living with concept? And I can make concept of anything, of any teaching, whether Krishnamurti, Buddha, Osho, or anybody, or Upanishads. See, that's why I always say teaching is never in the books. Teaching is never outside. The true teaching has to be in the heart, in one's being. All the teachings which are outside in the books, they are only indicators. And unless I experiment with it, unless I actualize those indicators, those insight in my life, they are all dead. And the insight happens in a moment, in a flash. I may perceive something now, and it is over. I can see the danger of living with nationalism. If I see it, it is over. If I see the danger of living with identification with certain thing, it is over. But if I have not seen it, it will come back. So the work is, again, I ask this question. So this is really an arduous work. It's not just, idling or sleeping. Actually, this work of doing nothing is a tremendous work.
I am in agreement with you. Actually, one of the things that I have done is that I have looked at various ways, whether it is from Sanatan Dharma or Kabbalah or Osho. Like Osho, for example, most Osho followers are not too fond of J. Krishnamurti, and probably vice versa. I don't know. I haven't come across that. But I have heard about this debate. But I found they were saying exactly the same thing. One said it in poetry and one said it in mathematics. कुछ अलग, and now I realize कि कोई भी कुछ अलग नहीं कह रहा है. No seer has said anything separate. All have said the same thing, that we are all the same, we are all one, and it is the separation that is the cause of all suffering.
Yes.
But what I have also found is that destination same hai, but paths बहुत सारे हैं, and each of us has to find ourselves on that path with which our energy resonates the most, because that is when the journey will not seem arduous.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to add, see, seeing the danger of identification is important. I have been saying through all my presentation. Seeing also the danger of identifying with any teacher is equally important. But that can be any teacher, whether Krishnamurti, Osho, Buddha. See, our problem is we get caught into this whole debate, who is true? That is not the question of self-inquiry, who is true? But what is truth?
What is truth? Absolutely.
That is the whole reversal transformation. When we are in the debate of which teacher is more important, which teacher is great, that's superficial, I would say. All these teachers are saying, find out what is true, what is truth in your heart, in your daily life. See how you are living with illusions. Then when you are truly directed to yourself, then the real work begins. When we are only dealing with, who has said more beautifully and all that, that may be, as you read many novels, you may read it and go on debating. That's a wastage of energy. But
I don't even call it wastage of energy anymore. किसी को उसी में मजा आता तो ठीक है, अभी शायद उसका वही करने का समय है, वो करे. मैंने उसको भी जज नहीं करना, but ये है कि हाँ, पॉइंटिंग फिंगर को जज नहीं करना है, मून की तरफ देखने की कोशिश करनी है. पॉइंटिंग फिंगर्स में कंपैरिजन करके, इसकी मोटी है, इसकी पतली है, इसकी गोरी है, इसकी काली है, कोई फायदा नहीं. Nothing is going to come out of it. One might just lose the vision of the moon, which is possible. And for those who may, there is a joy of looking at that moon, and that there is वो जो flashes भी आते हैं कभी-कभी, उसमें इतनी खूबसूरती होती है कि लगता है कि हाँ, इसमें लगे रहो. Okay, Ashutosh wants to ask something. Yes, Ashutosh, please do.
Yeah. Hi. Can you hear me?
yes.
Yeah. I was saying that this sense of connectedness and everybody being unified at the root and belonging to the same sort of superconscious and all that. I think many great people and many great souls have seen it, experienced it, shared it, and we sort of intellectually somewhere know it, that we're all connected and part of the same Godhead. However, within Hinduism also, there exists this sort of approach or thought of, to each according to his karmic load. So my journey, the trajectory of my life is determined by my karam. And when somebody is in distress, I've heard people saying, "Arey uske karam bade kharab hai," or that's why he or she is going through this. So how does the karmic theory reconcile with this unified theory? क्योंकि अगर हमारे कर्म अलग हैं, then we are sort of separate. We're going to lead separate lives, and we are leading separate lives based on our karmic load. So there is that bit of tension between the two theories. I mean, and even in the Gita and other texts, it's me trying to realize my atma into the Paramatma. So it's an individual journey. वो जो दूसरों का मैं चेंज करूं और दूसरों का कनेक्शन ढूंढूं, वो इतना एम्फोसिस नहीं दिया. तो ये दोनों थोड़ा सा कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन शायद कई बार ही आता है. इसको आप कैसे क्लैरिफाई करेंगे आप?
First of all, I would say that one needs to be free from the authority of everything. Authority of, like in this field of self-knowing, authority has no role. Authority of any book, authority of any teacher. The only role is my clear perception, this inquiry, whether authentic inquiry is happening or not. So that's why the first step is very important, which is in freedom. Of course, I can read anything, any theory, but don't let that theory dominate my psyche. That is also important. Now, this question of karmic load or karma, how do I look at it? See, I feel that we are creating this karma through our thinking process. The way we are living our day-to-day life, this karma is being created. Everybody, all human beings are creating. Now, what is the source of that karma? This is the question. The karma action can originate from a confused mind, from a mind which is conditioned. And karma can also take place, or action can also take place from a crystal clear mind, from a silent mind. And the quality of both the karmas will be entirely different. The one karma which is being born out of unawareness, out of lack of clear perception, that contributes to ignorance, to suffering. And that leaves residue in the form of memories. But the other karma, which is, or action, which is born out of clear heart, clear mind, does not leave any residue. It is like an insight. It happens and it is finished. So, see, giving responsibility to the karma for our suffering, I feel, is also another great illusion. And this has happened, I feel, especially in Asian countries, because of strong identification with certain theories. And this gives consolation. I see, or we all see many people saying, if they are in the distress or they are in suffering, they say, oh, this is my karma. This is like being helpless. They just surrender to a certain idea or notion of karma or theory. And I feel this is part of ignorance. We need to be educated that the life is in this moment. Whatever has been lived is already dead. It's already is in the memories. And till I am being identified with those memories, I am reinforcing karmas. And those karmas, they do not exist actually in reality. They only exist in my dead memories, past. So living with the dead past will always create suffering, will always create, this distress. But I can see the illusion of it anytime. This freedom, that's why the freedom does not depend on time. It does not depend on any knowledge. It depends on clear perception in this living moment. That's why it takes time to gather suffering. But freedom doesn't require time. This is very hard to accept because we are all trained, conditioned that only through long training we will get freedom. After taking 100 years or 1,000, but these teachers, or I feel that, you know, they're saying that that's perception, this insight is timeless. Suffering has a cause, that's why it can be ended. But insight has no cause. That's why it can neither be created nor ended. And this insight is available at any moment. So this ending of karma is possible at any moment. This is what I feel.
So Mukesh,
Living with,
also,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, no, I have completed.
I've also felt, I think वो freedom भी one time नहीं है. It is in the moment, but it has to be had moment to moment as well.
Yes, of course. That's why there is nothing one time in this journey.
हाँ, वो the point is वो laziness जो आप कह रहे हैं ना, arduous इसलिए लगता है कि it's not कि अब ये हो गया तो ये घर मैंने खरीद लिया, ये मेरे नाम पे हो गया तो अब ये मेरा हो गया. That freedom has to be, you can't slip into unawareness. That freedom can be had in the moment, yes, but it has to be had moment to moment.
Yeah. To see that this insight, actually insight is freedom, and this insight of freedom is neither in the past nor in the future. It is in this living moment. So it has no even continuity.
True.
Like it's like a flash. It happens and it dies. And again, like, you know, that's why it is like a moving river. It's a living river. And each moment, this insight has to be fresh, new. Actually, insight may turn into the past knowledge, and I can write about a book, but that is no longer having that power of truth. That will only be just in the book, and that may be helpful, of course. One can get reminded by that, but the real work does not depend on anything except one's real, authentic inquiry or seeing in this moment.
I can see my
Thank
favorite
you.
book behind you, Mukesh. I am that. A lot of us have been planning to read that in one of our um, book club sessions, but anyway. Anybody else has any more questions, or can Mukesh give some concluding comments and bring it to an end? Anybody else with some questions?
आखिरी में अगर मुझे कुछ कहना हो तो बस यही कहूँगा कि हमारा कोई भी एक्शन अगर उसके रूट में प्रेम नहीं है, उसके गहराई में अगर करुणा नहीं है, एक स्पष्ट दर्शन नहीं है, जिसे क्लियर परसेप्शन मैंने कहा, एक स्पष्ट अनुभूति नहीं है, तो वो जो एक्शन होगा वो किसी न किसी रूप में दुख को लाएगा. और वो एक्शन ना केवल अनावश्यक होगा बल्कि ना केवल हमारे लिए बल्कि सभी के लिए दुख का कारण होगा. तो हम ये देखें कि हम किस तरह का जीवन जी रहे हैं, और ये जो क्षण प्रति क्षण की जो सजगता है, ये जो स्पष्ट रूप से देखना है, यही एक गाइड है, यही एक रियल टीचर है, मुझे ऐसा लगता है. और अगर मुझे ये एहसास हो कि मुझे जो कुछ भी पता है, क्योंकि पता होना और अनुभूति होना दो चीजें होती हैं. जो भी पता होना बहुत ही सीमित है, उसकी अपनी जरूरत है, उसकी अपनी एक, मैं नहीं कह रहा हूँ कि उसको आप अलग हटा दें, आप कुछ भी अलग नहीं हटा सकते हैं. आप हर चीज को उसका सही स्थान दे दें, यही धार्मिक जीवन है. ध्यान क्या है? हर चीज को उसका सही स्थान देना, ज्ञान को उसका सही स्थान देना, धन को उसका सही स्थान देना, आपकी जो आकांक्षाएं हैं उसको सही स्थान देना. जब चीजें मिसप्लेस्ड हो जाती हैं, जब हम चीजों को उसका सही स्थान नहीं देते हैं, तब वो दुख का कारण बनती है. नहीं तो हर चीज का अपना सौंदर्य है, विचार का सौंदर्य है, हमारी बुद्धि का, इंटेलेक्ट का सौंदर्य है. पर हम जब एक चीज को डोमिनेट होने देते हैं, तब हम एक बहुत ही सीमित जिंदगी जीते हैं. तो अपनी इन सीमाओं को तोड़िए, अपने को खोलिए, और ये खुलना ये एक सतत सीखने की प्रक्रिया है. अपने को खाली करना, इसमें भरना नहीं है. लगातार हम भर रहे हैं तो खाली भी करते रहें. तो इस सौंदर्य के साथ मुझे लगता है जीना, इस प्रेम के साथ, इस पावनता की अनुभूति के साथ, यही स्वयं को जानने की गहरी प्रक्रिया है। थैंक यू।
बहुत सुंदर, बहुत सुंदर। दैट वाज, आई थिंक, एकदम प्रैक्टिकल गाइडलाइन मिल गई हम सबको।
ये मैं कहना चाहूँगा आपने अंत में जो ये बोला है धर्म और ज्ञान दोनों के बारे में, ये बहुत ही अद्भुत था, बहुत सुंदर था, और इससे बहुत मदद मिलती है कि हर चीज़ की जरूरत है और उसका स्थान है। Beautiful. Thanks for this wonderful.
I think this was like the cherry on the cake.
This was the real takeaway. और पता नहीं क्यों, मतलब मैं शायद ये I am being tempted to say this कि शायद ये आप हिंदी में सहजता से बोले तो ये बहुत गहराई से
Exactly. I was going to say that last में वो cherry on the cake was because वो हिंदी में बोला और दिल को छू गया एकदम। The real deal came in Hindi. Thank you.
तो मजा आया। तो
ये हम लोगों को ना आज का जो हम लोग का जो भी अनुष्ठान था ना, उसका प्रसाद इतना पावन, इतना होलसम मिला है ना। तो अब यही है, देखो हम लोग जब शुरू हुए थे तो 26 लोग थे, अब 19 पार्टिसिपेंट्स रह गए। तो वो 26 से 19 की जो छटाई होगी, जो 19 रुके हैं ना, उनको सबको प्रसाद मिल गया आज। हो सकता है जो गए हैं उनको ऑलरेडी मिल चुका हो, नो जजमेंट अगेन ऑन दैट, बट आई एम सेइंग दिस वाज एब्सोल्युटली फिनोमिनल मुकेश, थैंक यू सो वेरी मच। वो एकदम तृप्त हो गई सुन के ये। It's going back with something so solid to take away from this session. I will just do the अपना सॉफ्टवेयर भी थोड़ा मैं अपना चला लूं, फिर इसको क्लोज कर देंगे। ओम सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ओम असतो मा सद्गमय, तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय, मृत्योर्मामृतं गमय। ओम पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते, पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ओम शांति शांति शांति। Thank you so much, everybody. And special thanks, of course, to Mukesh for making time for all of us. And he keeps doing retreats. मुकेश, आप जो भी आपकी अगली रिट्रीट्स वगैरह होंगी, जो भी आपके सेशंस होंगे, उनका अगर मुझे भेज दिया करेंगे तो जो हमारे ग्रुप्स हैं मैं उनमें शेयर कर दूंगी, so that those people who are resonating with this process can join you there. Which is, the idea is to expose people to the various processes and the options that they have. And thank you for all the people who attended.
Thank you everyone.